Good evening. Thank you for joining us. My name is Sarah Hoy, and I'm the Communications Director for the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. Tonight, we are hosting the Want to Go Hunting webinar, our Intro to Hunting webinar, featuring Bob Knack, who is our Recruiting, Retention, and Reactivation Team Supervisor. We also have new hunters with us, Andrew Lutz and Martin Perales. With that, I will turn it over to Bob Knack. Bob.
Great. Thanks, Sarah, for that introduction, and welcome to everybody that's joining us this evening. We're happy to be here with you and excited to share the information we have tonight and to hear from our guest speakers that have started hunting as adults. The intended audience for this webinar is people that may have an interest in going hunting, but just haven't taken that first step to get started. And we know from data and research that we have that people just need to be invited in many cases. They're waiting for the invitation to go, whether it's from their significant other, friends, or relatives. And the fire is there, the interest is there. And so the title is appropriate. We're inviting you to go hunting. Do you want to go hunting with us? Anytime you're trying something new, you often go to trusted friends as well that maybe have experience doing that. And the reason you're here tonight is because you have an interest in hunting. You've got the invitation from us, and we can be your trusted friend to learn from and to answer your questions as you go through this journey to start hunting. The department has dedicated staff, and as Sarah mentioned, I supervise a team that is focused on promoting hunting, fishing, and trapping here in the state. And we have a great team of people around the state that are ready and willing to answer your questions and to provide you any kind of support you need to get started. So we're excited to be here with you tonight. Kind of the agenda that we're going to follow for this evening. I have a quick presentation that I'll go through that's going to give you some quick tips on that first step that you can take, some information you can digest to start on your journey to begin hunting. Also joined by two guests, Andrea Lutz and Martin Perales, who started hunting as adults, and we're going to have a nice discussion with them, learn from their experience. They're excited to share their experience with you, and I think that if you are new to hunting, you'll definitely relate to their stories, and again, hopefully that'll give you some confidence moving forward here. So with that, I think Katie, if you want to show the first slide for the presentation, I'll get right into it. Great. Thank you. So why hunt? And I don't intend to spend a lot of time on this slide. The fact that you're here joining us or watching this webinar, you've probably made some decisions on your own on why you want to hunt. And it could be a variety of the ones listed here. Spending time with your family and friends, that's a big aspect of hunting, the camaraderie, sharing that experience, that outdoor experience with each other. Health and wellness, and admittedly, I hunt for probably all of these reasons, but it's good to get a break from the stresses of daily life, take a mental break and sit out in the woods for a while and enjoy nature, as well as the exercise that, depending on the hunting you're doing, can provide as well. Food is pretty straightforward. You can secure your own food, which is always a good thing. There's a challenge involved with pursuing the game that you're targeting, and again, connecting with nature, like I had mentioned before, just feels good to get away from the hustle and bustle of the regular world, your daily routine, and just relax. Canine companionship I put in here. This is kind of a big deal, I think, for a lot of people. I don't know too many people that don't like dogs, and of course, dogs are a great hunting companion as well, and many of the different opportunities for hunting that you might pursue could include dogs. And there's nothing more rewarding than training your dog, and then watching it do its job in the field, whether it's a bird dog or a hound dog. There's lots of different things you can train your dog to do. They're very versatile, from blood tracking to finding shed antlers, you name it. It's a great opportunity to spend time with the dog, and again, get some exercise as well. So this is just a quick list of some thoughts that you've probably already given considerations of why you might want to hunt. There's more, for sure. And again, there's no one size fits all for everyone. Next slide. So I thought I'd just touch on a couple quick things, quick opportunities for you that can get you started down that hunting journey. And the first one is our mentored hunting program. And so this is a really nice opportunity to give it a try without a lot of commitment. There's no age restrictions on this program. There are mentored only hunting licenses, which are, again, relatively inexpensive. You do not need to complete a hunter education course. So again, this is kind of testing the waters. Of course, you know, we always recommend completing a hunter safety education course. And so if you give hunting a try through this program, and you think it's something you want to continue to do in the future, strongly recommend you take a hunter safety course. However, you don't have to, and each year you could continue to be mentored without having it. But the other important aspect of this is that you're within arm's reach of a certified mentor, and you can look on our DNR webpage for the mentored hunting program, and there's more information and details there. This program, of course, follows all hunting regulations, season requirements. It's during the regular hunting season, and again, you're just hunting with a mentor that is licensed and experienced and is right next to you, teaching you, talking you through whatever the situation might be. So check that out. I think it's a really great way to kind of get your feet wet with hunting and being able to do it with somebody that's got some experience. Next slide. Of course, I mentioned hunter safety education, and again, strongly encourage everyone to take this course. Wisconsin has a great tradition of safe hunting, and we know that hunting is a safe activity because of this course and because of the many volunteer instructors through the years in Wisconsin that have dedicated their time and knowledge to teaching people how to hunt safely. So certainly appreciate everything that those folks are doing to continue our strong hunting heritage here in the state. There's a couple options for completing hunter safety here in Wisconsin. Of course, there's an in-person course that you can come to that involves a classroom portion and then a field portion as well. Typically, these run over the course of a few days, evening sessions, and then maybe a field day on a weekend. So pretty straightforward there. The next one, the internet field day, and we've been talking about, that can be a little bit confusing. It's really internet plus field day. And so the classroom portion of that course you can do online at your own convenience. And then the field day is something you come to in person, and you have to test out and prove that you can safely handle a firearm to an instructor on that field day. So that's a nice option there. And then the last one is an online only course, and that's available to 18 or older. So again, that's all online, no test out requirement, and is a nice option for people that prefer to learn that way. So those are the three ways that you can take the course. To find a course in your area, just go to type in hunter safety or hunter education on the DNR webpage, and it'll take you can search by county, and it'll take you to the courses that are offered there. And of course, if you're having trouble finding a course in your area, by all means, reach out to myself or any DNR staff member, and we would certainly be willing to help you find a course. Next slide. And the last programs that I wanted to mention to you are Learn to Hunt programs. And these are typically multi-day programs, really, really nice programs. And they include, they're required to include 4 hours total. And that includes classroom session, field hands-on activities session. And then oftentimes it culminates with an actual hunt. So those are really great. And part of the reason that we decided to do this webinar series is because these Learn to Hunt programs are excellent opportunities. And the DNR, we coordinate and put on some of these programs, but there's certainly many organizations and individuals out there that put on their own Learn to Hunt programs as well. And those are sponsored by the DNR. So they're really nice programs, great opportunity to meet and interact with people. However, in many cases, they're limited too, to 15, 20 people, depending on the situation. And our experience has been that they fill up very quickly when they're announced, within hours. And that's great, but it also demonstrates the demand and interest from the public that want to learn how to hunt. And that's exciting for us. And so we were thinking, well, how else can we help those people? And again, this webinar was one way that we weren't going to limit participation. Hopefully you get some information to scratch the surface and intrigue you enough to pursue it a little bit further. And so this webinar is being recorded, and we will put it on our webpage as well for later viewing. More on the Learn to Hunt programs. Hunter safety education certification is not required to participate in those. However, some of the organizations and groups that are sponsoring those programs may make that requirement. And so, again, it depends on the situation there. Same thing kind of goes with age. There's no specific age requirements, but again, the organizations or individuals that are sponsoring the programs may put on an age requirement at their own choosing. So again, look specifically to the programs that you're interested in. You will be asked to acquire a DNR customer ID, very simple to do online or by phone. And that's just our way of tracking participation in these events. And the last thing I wanted to mention is our event calendar. And you can, if you type in Learn to Hunt on the DNR webpage, you'll see more information than I'm showing you here. And there is a link to an events calendar there right now. And so you can go there and look for an event that may be in your area, and there'll be instructions there how to sign up for it as well. So again, a few things to check out there. Just wanted to highlight a couple programs. Again, these are just things that you can do to get your feet wet. I'd also mention that with this webinar series tonight, we're talking about just getting started, and again, really targeting people that have a general interest in giving hunting a try. We are planning on doing more of these webinars on a monthly schedule, and each one will be on a different topic. And so, for example, the next one we're thinking about doing is focused on what kind of hunting opportunities does Wisconsin provide. And Wisconsin's a great hunting state, great hunting heritage, lots of opportunities that you may or may not already know about. And so we're planning on highlighting those. We'll talk a little bit about equipment needs and things like that to participate. But another webinar that we've talked about doing is target practice. Where can I shoot my gun? And we can talk about those opportunities in the state. So if you're interested in tonight and you want to hear more, stay tuned. We do plan on doing more of these webinars in the future. So I'll take the next slide. Yeah, so kind of in closing, here I wanted to give you my contact information here. If you do have any questions, feel free to email or give me a call. Also included contact information for our hunting and shooting sports program specialist, Emily Eel. And so all the programs that I shared with you just now, Emily is very familiar with those as well, and would be happy to help you out. So with that, that's all I had for the presentation here tonight. Again, just wanted to scratch the surface a little bit on some programs and share contact information to those of you that might be interested or have more questions. And we are planning to do this for about an hour, and we'll just see how things are going. But right now, I'd like to get to our guest speakers, and our plan there is to allow them to introduce themselves, and then I do have a few questions that I'll work through with them, and we'll have some fun here and just see how things go. And I hope that viewers can see yourself in what you're going to hear from Andrea and Martine, and realize that you're not that far away from giving hunting a try. And I think you're going to learn that, if they can do it, you can do it. And so really, really looking forward to this. So I think, Andrea, why don't we start with you, and why don't you just take a little bit of time to kind of introduce yourself, tell folks whatever you'd like to share about yourself, and then talk a little just quickly about what prompted you to give hunting a try.
Yeah, sure. I'm Andrea Lutz. I'm 33 years old. I started getting into hunting about 5 years ago. What got me interested, it wasn't really like a clear-cut thing. I just kind of was drawn to it. I was initially drawn to archery. I had shot archery in Girl Scout camp, when I was like 12 years old. And I just kind of woke up one morning and I was like, I feel like I could still do it. So I just bought a bow and started kind of shooting. I lived in Madison. I shoot my bow in the alley behind my house. And just kind of one thing led to another. And I thought, maybe I should try hunting. And then it was just kind of a crazy journey from there, I guess, to where I am today.
Yeah. Well, I think you participated in some of the Learn to Hunt events as well. And I know you kind of jumped in with a couple hunting dogs, and you've had some success bow hunting as well. So in 5 years, you've accomplished a lot.
Yeah, I kind of am sort of all in or all out with things, like I just really like to just like go crazy. And hunting was so fun. There's so many different opportunities, and there's just so many things to get into and obsess over and read about. And I just kind of was like, yeah. And the Learn to Hunt programs were like the main catalyst, like from being interested in hunting, trying to hunt, failing, a lot. And then I found these programs and I made a total 180. Like it really, really helped me start figuring things out and finding success. And like, that was the real beginning, like taking a Learn to Hunt turkey and realizing that I wasn't cursed. I just didn't know what I was doing.
Uh-huh. Yeah, no, that's a good point. And some of the turkey hunts, Learn to Turkey hunts that we did this spring, I know the participants were there. They had tried turkey hunting and they just weren't having success. So, they were involved just to try to tip the scales in their favor a little bit more.
Yes, a little help goes a long way.
Great. Well, thanks, Andrea. And Martine, I'll turn it over to you if you want to introduce yourself, share a few things, and just talk a little bit about why you decided to give hunting a try.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Martine. I guess we're doing our age. So I'm 34. I guess the reason I got into hunting actually was sort of an extension. I started fishing, I also learned that as an adult. I was probably like 20 years old when I started fishing, just for bass and stuff like that. And, I got into that, and I got into this idea of, being able to find my own food and that kind of stuff. So I was always interested in hunting and foraging, sort of after I started fishing. But really the opportunity came up when I was an undergraduate at UC Davis in California. Actually, they had a hunting class, and the way they build it was it's sort of it's a integral facet for any fish and wildlife professional. Like, you should be able to talk fishing, talk hunting, because a lot of the stakeholders, a lot of the folks you're interacting with, they fish and hunt, and so you should be able to just be able to carry that conversation. And so that was sort of how I got my start, was this opportunity came up at UC Davis. And so I got into it and actually took a waterfowl hunting class there. And it has helped actually tremendously. I speak with a lot of rural land owners as part of my current job, and just being able to, rocking the camo hat and being able to rep it and actually talking to folks about the hunting they do on their land, it just builds trust and it helps move, restoration projects along, that kind of stuff. And so that was sort of how I got into hunting and why I decided to actually try it. The opportunity came up, and also it was going to be sort of helpful from a professional aspect for me.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's a good mention there, Martine. The fact that, especially if you're considering a career in resource management, you're going to be working, depending on your job, you might cross paths with hunters in the hunting community, and the passion that they have, and it's really important for staff to understand why people are passionate about their favorite hunting approach. So no, that's great. Okay, well, thanks, Martine. So I just got a couple questions here that I think we can just kind of take turns talking through, and we really tried to anticipate some questions that, again, a new hunter, somebody that's thinking about giving it a try, what they might be wondering. And I should mention too, those of you that are viewing, the public that are viewing online here on the YouTube channel, you should be able to use the chat function to type in your questions. And so feel free to do that. And if they're relevant, right while we're talking, Katie Grant will chime in and let us know that. And otherwise, we've kind of wrapped up our discussion. We'll try to address those questions at the end. So feel free to type in your questions at any time. Okay, so just a couple things here that we think people might be interested in, and some of them are a little bit more specific than others. But Andrea, maybe I'll ask you: Did you have any early challenges? You said you wanted to get into it. I'm going to give it a try. Any early challenges, and then how did you overcome those challenges?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of challenges when it comes to hunting anything. You've got to learn how to use your weapon, and you've got to learn how to find the animal, and you've got to learn how to be quiet enough, to come up on it. So I think just like figuring it out from I was so green, I can't explain, had no hunting experience. I was just throwing myself into it. My first deer season, I didn't even know what the rut was. I was like, I saw a buck running around crazy. I don't know what he's doing, so it's kind of like drinking from fire hoses, they say, it's so much information, and you have to kind of learn what to hold on to. Okay, I'm just going to focus on a few things instead of trying to do a million things and kind of lose my mind. So, really overcoming the learning curve issue, I found mentors. I did the Learn to Hunt program. I realized there were people who were willing to talk to me. So I pretty much signed up for any Learn to Hunt that I could. And I started going to local archery clubs and shooting 3D archery, and just kind of, I'm later, this is my later 20s. I'm not really afraid to ask questions anymore. You know what I mean? Not embarrassed. So talk to anyone who would talk to me and ask them questions. I talk to people at work. I'd be like, so what do you think about scent control? I overcame my problems by just talking to people. And that's the best way to do it, because trial and error takes forever. And sometimes it's really hard to see your own errors, so just putting myself out there and talking to people, not everyone wants to talk to you, and that's okay. But some people do. And those people, will be your best friend. So yeah.
Well, and that's a really good point. And I mentioned the department staff that are here to help, but there's a number of individuals, organizations out there that just want to introduce people to the outdoors and hunting, and it's Wisconsin to me would be hard to beat, I think, as far as the great people and the great hunters we have in this state to learn from. So yeah, I think being a little outgoing and asking questions, and it's going to save you a lot of time learning from trial and error. So Yeah, use those resources for sure. Martine, what about you? Anything more to add to that? Any early challenges that you came across?
Yeah, I guess for me, what I found overwhelming, and I think this is just my sort of my aversion to paperwork in general, was, the regulations sometimes were confusing for me, figuring out where you can hunt and, bag limits and seasons and that kind of stuff. It just felt like a lot to keep track of, in addition to, being safe while you're out in the field and being quiet and all these sort of like little aspects that you're keeping in mind when you're out there. So, that took a little while for me to understand how to read sort of the legalese in the regs.
Okay.
I guess some of the early things for me, I would get hung up on some of the technical aspects of hunting, like what choke size should I use and what shot size should I use? And then you start Googling this stuff and you end up in all sorts of weird corners of the internet. And it's like, well, all right, I got to find a mentor. And so for me, actually, there was another student who had been waterfowl hunting since he was a kid. And so I just started hunting with him, and that helped me out tremendously. So the mentorship thing, and just not being embarrassed, as Andrea mentioned, just ask questions. You learn from your peers or your network and your mentors. And so that was huge for me. But just some of the little stuff like that, like where can you hunt? I was in California. You have relatively few options. You have some big chunks of land, but they're far away and you only have a handful of options nearby. So understanding that, understanding my chokes and all those types of things, but just takes time and conversation with friends.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of you mentioned before, searching the internet or a Google search, and holy cow, there is a lot of information out there. And I run into this myself. If I'm looking for something that I'm unfamiliar with, it might be related to hunting as well. And you get so much, and what do you believe? And when it comes to the equipment that's out there, people are making money off the latest and greatest thing. And do I need that or not? Do I need the latest camo, or will, my Army camo work for me? And so those are all the things that I think can be overwhelming for a new hunter. And again, having a trusted friend, a mentor, somebody that you can talk to kind of feel confident in the information that you're getting. And those people, they're very willing to help you. And I know Andrea and I kind of got to know each other a little bit through some raccoon hunting that we've both picked up here with hounds that we have that are sisters to each other. And we probably have the same mentor that is getting tired of hearing from us, but I'm always asking questions, and what about this and what about that, and this equipment, that equipment, you don't want to turn the dog off and to its job, and all of that stuff. And it's fun, and you're learning, and again, those mentors, I think, really, and those trusted friends really enjoy sharing that information. And like Andrea said, if you get into a Learn to Hunt program, or even your hunter safety education course, you get to know your instructor. They're likely hunters. These people will really enjoy sharing what they know with you. So you just got to be a little bit outgoing and put yourself out there, and find somebody that you feel comfortable with, for sure. Great. Well, in another area here that first time hunters or people even thinking about hunting might be a little concerned about is handling firearms. And we've talked about hunter safety courses. Hunting is a very safe activity, especially at least here in Wisconsin and across the country, especially considering the number of hunters that are participating. And you can only look to the Wisconsin deer hunt, not the 9-day gun deer hunt, when everybody dons their blaze orange and hits the woods. And again, very few incidents during that season. And again, it's because of the great instructors we have here in the state and the safety course requirements that we have. But, you know, people get nervous around guns, and especially if they're handling them for the first time, if they're not super comfortable with them. And that was one of the questions we had. And Andrea, you had mentioned that you shot your bow in the alley, but what about firearms? Did you have any experiences or thoughts when you were kind of first introduced to firearms?
Yes, yeah. I had so I didn't grow up with guns at all. And so getting comfortable with a firearm took a long time for me because I was really scared. You know, I was like so safe where I was almost couldn't even really, you know, go hunting because I was so nervous. So really just sort of stopped and tried to like focus on it, you know, and especially because like the first time I had ever shot a gun, you know, I'm like out with a friend and it's too big for me and it kicks really hard. And I had kind of was like, oh God, I don't know if I can even do this, you know, but, and this is going to sound kind of silly, but what I did is I got like a Daisy BB gun, like a pump BB gun. And I did target practice with that. And I played with that for a long time just to get kind of used to pointing and shooting and pulling a trigger. Obviously it's a lot different than an actual gun, but you know, you get kind of the muscle memory, turning the safety on and off with like a much lower pressure, right? It's a BB gun. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of went up to, you know, having a 22 and then doing shotgun stuff and, you know, just going to the range and just shooting my gun until I felt like I could do it. You know, I felt like I wasn't going to make a mistake. And I think being comfortable, like give yourself time to practice, you know, like nothing is worse than going out in the field and being like, I don't know if I can pull the trigger, because you're not going to have a good hunt if you don't feel ready. And like, for me, like, I love to prepare for things. I love walking into situations, like having already thought about everything that could happen. Right. So that would be my best advice, you know, start slow, you know, don't start with a deer rifle, start with a 22 and find a friend who will, you know, is a responsible, you know, gun owner and go with them, or find clinics. You know, I've been to like the wing shooting clinic through the DNR and through Learn to Hunt. So you're going to shoot your gun in a clinic setting too. And so then you'll have someone standing right behind you who's like a trained, you know, shooting instructor. And, you know, it doesn't get much better than that. So, you know, just take it slow and don't rush into it. You know, everyone has different opinions, you know, find someone you like and stay.
Are you guys hearing me okay? I kind of blanked out a little bit. Good. Okay. Yeah, no, that's great advice, Andrea. And yeah, starting small, small calibers. You know, you want to focus on the target and being accurate with your shot, and you don't want to be worried about the recoil. And if you have a bad experience shooting a gun for the first time, the next time you shoot it, of course, that's all you're going to think about is the recoil. And yeah, so that's great advice. Starting slow. My wife Jamie and I have been mentoring our two young daughters to hunting, and that's how we did it. They had BB guns, then the 22s, 20 gauges, 243 for a rifle for deer hunting. You know, low recoil, and shooting at targets that, you know, whether they're like with the 22s, they're more interactive, if they're spinners and things like that, that kind of take your mind off of what the recoil is doing. You know, if you're shooting clay pigeons, you get to see the clay target explode, and, you know, just trying to take your mind off that recoil. And like you said, practice. The more you shoot your gun, the more comfortable you're going to be with it. When you're in a hunting situation, you know, it's going to be very familiar for you to pull the trigger. So yeah, that's great advice, Andrea. Martine, do you have any other thing?
I love the BB.
Add relative to handling a firearm for the first time?
I guess nothing additional. I mean, I love the BB gun thing because I grew up sort of shooting cans with a BB gun, and so I was relatively comfortable with the concept of, you know, pointing the firearm in a safe direction and using the safety and that kind of stuff. But was quite nervous with a firearm. But I spent a lot of time at the trap and skeet range with some other young new hunters too. And so that's the way that all of us sort of overcame that, was just, you know, going, you know, shooting 150 rounds of shotgun if you can handle it. And that made it sort of very easy to use the firearm and feel safe with it and get really comfortable with it. So you just put in the time and go to your range. I think that's the best way to do it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And did you have, I'm assuming that you own firearms now, Martine, you know, did you struggle to kind of figure out what gun you needed, or did you rely on friends for some help with that as well?
You know, so I started with waterfowl, and shotguns are relatively straightforward. You know, you can't really screw that up too bad unless you get like a single shot or something like that. But if you can put 3 rounds in it, you can hunt you can hunt waterfowl with it. And so that wasn't too bad. The thing that was really sort of bewildering for me was trying to get a deer rifle and the right one, and figuring out all the, you know, you Google it and everyone's got an opinion. And, you know, that was tough. So I just, you know, called Jim Whipperford. Hey, what do I need? What's the one round for everything? You know, and he's a local mentor, right, in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I got over the deer hunting rifle thing, because the gear stuff for that can be intense, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be. If you like looking at ballistic charts and things like that, there's a ton of really neat information to dive into. And I'm kind of more like you, Martine, a little bit in that, you know, here's what I need. And then I go to somebody that's really intelligent in that area and hey, tell me what I need. and then I use it. And so, yeah, but to each his own for, you know, whatever interests you in researching those different firearm types. Great. Another question, and this is kind of an interesting one, but people might be thinking about if they're thinking about hunting is number one, they're often concerned with safety. And I think we've talked about, you know, the fact that hunting is a safe sport, and you know, you should always be concerned about safety. I think if you're not concerned about safety, then you're being too lackadaisical and too comfortable with what you're doing. So safety is always a top priority, and it is a safe sport. But the other thing that people might be thinking about is taking the life of a living animal. And you know, when it comes to the time, if you're gonna harvest that squirrel, turkey, deer, you know, whatever it is, you know, will I be able to pull the trigger and do that? How am I going to feel after I do that? And that's all very natural. And you know, I think you all probably had your own experiences, and I've been hunting with people that, you know, have come to tears of joy, tears of just excitement and the adrenaline. I think of some of the times sitting with my daughters after they've shot at a deer, and y'all may have had this experience too. I mean, they can't stop shaking. The adrenaline is doing its work, and their legs are shaking all over the place, and so yeah, there's a lot of emotion involved with taking the life of any animal. And I think that, you know, this may be my own personal opinion, if you don't feel some element of sorrow, you know, I think again that's only natural. But then, you know, very quickly it's followed up with joy of success and sharing it with somebody else, and all the hard work you put into it. Maybe you were hunting by yourself and you've scouted and spent lots of time pursuing this animal, and you were successful. And so there's a lot of emotion there. And I just, I guess if, you know, Andrea, maybe to you, based on your experience, you know, how did you come to deal with that? Is that something you were concerned about when you started hunting? And if you just want to, you know, share your thoughts on that.
It was definitely something I was concerned about. It was definitely something that was on the top of my mind, especially when I first started getting into it and getting closer to, you know, actually harvesting animals. You know, I started really kind of getting sort of philosophical about it, like, you know, why am I doing this? You know, and I think I had a lot of, you know, most of the people around me didn't hunt. So they were kind of asking me, in a different tone. So like, why are you doing this? And there's a lot of interesting literature out there. And I just started reading about, like the pursuit of the hunt and the history of hunting and like, my personal heritage, Wisconsin heritage, and then human heritage in general, I mean, is hunting. I think it's really in our blood, and, it's the circle of life. And I think sometimes people forget, like, we're a part of the natural landscape, right? Like, we're not outside of it. Like, just like, what's going out in the field, like, we're a part of that. So it's okay to participate, and take things home, hunt, take an animal home and feed your family is like, it's an incredible feeling. And like you said, I agree. Like, if you don't have some type of feeling about it, that would be the problem. The feelings aren't the problem. Like, everyone's going to feel them. And like, everyone's going to react differently, right? Like, if hunting was easy, everyone would do it. So like, you just have to follow your gut. Like, and I think most people have it in them. They just don't know it. Like, I was scared. You're thinking of every scenario. I can't pull the trigger. We're going to be able to do it if you prepared for it and you want it. I have cried in the field so much, every hunting, like my boyfriend laughs at me because it's like, I come home crying when I've failed and I come home crying when I've succeeded. It's a lot. And I think that's part of what really draws people and humans to hunting, is just like a fully immersive experience. Like, you don't get to see where your food comes from at the grocery store. Like, being so connected to it is unparalleled. I mean, it's absolutely changed my life. So
yeah, no, and I fully agree. I think about when I'm out hunting, and oftentimes, I recall having these feelings turkey hunting. If you're a bow hunter and you're sitting in a tree stand during the rut, and you have close interactions with the deer, turkey hunting can be very exciting. I often think that, man, I don't know what else I could be doing right now that would give me this kind of excitement and just such a change from the day-to-day, hustle and bustle of daily life. Man, it's really, like you said, Andrea, it's really hard to beat that. And whether, oftentimes, if I'm waiting on a turkey to come in and it's gobbling, but it's not in range, I kind of mentally say to myself, if I shoot this turkey or not, this is worth the price of admission, man. This is worth the license money I'm paying to do this. And of course, it's always, nice to be successful every now and then, but those emotions that we hope everybody that's listening will take advantage of are pretty cool. So Martine, why don't we go to you? Anything you want to add on that with the, kind of the thinking about taking the life of an animal?
Yeah. I mean, like Andrea, I sort of thought about it a lot. Did the whole philosophizing and rationalizing the act and that kind of stuff. But I found it to be just this incredibly profound experience. I mean, I remember the first animal I ever harvested and how warm it was and what that made me feel, like sort of a great sense of responsibility to sort of conserve the resource. I started caring about the animal. Like, if I'm going to take a life, I want to sort of see if I can give life back, to the wetlands and that kind of stuff. And so it made me, like, I don't know, you start thinking about things in this different way of like, if I'm going to take a life, what should I give in return? I should, work towards the resource. I should also, in the kitchen, treat it right, eat every bit that I can, that kind of thing. But yeah, I just found it to be so profound. The highs and lows of hunting, you just can't have that in a single day. I feel like you could be sitting in the field, waiting for your deer to come out, and just have no hope, and you're cold, and then all of a sudden it pops out, and the adrenaline's dumping, and you're warm all of a sudden, and you're shaking. I remember my first deer hunt, my mentor saw me get that adrenaline dump, and so I was shaking, and he was like, "Hey, deep breaths." So we had to go through this like breathing exercise then and there in the field. And then I remember, taking that animal's life once I had once it was sort of lined up correctly, and going out there and just spending, 5 minutes there thinking about what I had done. And I don't know, it's just this really deep, profound experience. And it's sort of like what Andrea was saying, it's sort of this connection to the human heritage, right? Like, people on this continent have been hunting and eating deer for 12,000 years or whatever the case is. And so now it's this novel experience to go hunting and this novel experience to eat venison. But that was what everyone did. And I don't know, I sort of think about deep time and that kind of stuff too when I'm out there. You just get all these sort of thoughts. You end up in all these weird little cul-de-sacs that I find very interesting and satisfying. But yeah, I mean, just a sort of a generative thing too, right? When you take the life of an animal, you start getting all these different questions that come to you, and start philosophizing new things, right? New to you, right? So
yeah. I think, and along those lines, I might be a little different because I'm trained biologist and resource manager, but I think for others it might make you think about conservation and habitat, and well, how did this animal get here? Well, of course they exist here in the state, but they exist because they have a place to live and breed and eat and find water, and at least that's, for me, that's what kind of my early years of rabbit hunting with my dad kind of triggered that for me. Like, this is really cool. I want more rabbits and to hunt. And what can we do? Well, let's make some brush piles, and I think people start out, hunting to harvest an animal, but all of a sudden they're in conservation and habitat management. And I know, in the deer world, some of these landowners started out, harvesting deer, big bucks, whatever the case might be. And they kind of moved through that. And now it's all about habitat and, what kind of wildflowers do I have on my property? And does the deer eat the wildflower? And, what's the percent protein there? They've just taken it to a whole different realm of kind of where they started. And so, yeah, I think it's kind of natural to make that progression. Another thing I think that you both talked about, and maybe we can move on to that too, is the food aspect and securing your own food. And totally agree with you, Martine, that you take the life of an animal, you owe it to that animal to use it for, whether it's food or fur for warmth, as in the case with our fur bears. And that's something that, in mentoring and teaching our kids was a big part of. They were right in there field dressing the deer and skinning and cutting up and fleshing some of the fur bears that we trapped. And, it really becomes, as Andrea mentioned before, reality really hits you in the face there, where your food's coming from. And oftentimes when we're eating, whether it's bear burger or a venison steak, we'll talk about that animal and like, oh, this is the one that, my daughter shot, and hey, thanks for providing tonight. And, it's just table conversation, but yeah, it can really become a way of life for you. And Andrea, I don't know if you have anything to share on, I'm going a little bit off topic here, but on that food aspect. And for a lot of people, that is a really important part of hunting. And if you have any thoughts you'd like to share.
Oh yeah. Eating is like one of the best parts. I mean, it's so fun to bring something to the table. It's so fun. Like, I've had so many friends over to have their first venison meal, their first squirrel meal. It is so fun to share with your friends. Like, that's one of my favorite parts. And yeah, filling the freezer, it feels great. And, it really does cut down on the grocery bill. I mean, there's no way around it. After you shoot a deer, like, that's what you want to eat. Like, you're not buying stuff, like looking up recipes. There's so many cool cookbooks out there now, like the internet, but like, there's having books is fun. Like, there's just so many cool resources out there. And yeah. And don't be afraid to like, I don't know, I eat everything, you know, like I'll eat a couple of raccoons every year, you know, like sometimes it's kind of a lonely meal, but like everyone needs to eat raccoon. It tastes like pork, you know, just like anything else. You got to butcher it right. You got to cook it right. You know, like we're having fun for sure. And like, yeah, bringing meat to the table, and, you know, I trap and hunt raccoons, and like having fur it's just, this year I wore a fur hat that I made out of a raccoon that I harvested, and it was so warm. I'm out in like -10-degree weather and I'm sweating. Like you can't beat this material. Like it just is so satisfying and exciting to have stuff that you brought home and share it with your friends and use it and enhance your life with it. Like it's so fun, you know, and like you can bring your deer to a processor. That's totally cool. But like butchering it at home is a wild experience. And like, I learned so much about anatomy, like in processing all my animals. I have learned more than I ever did in high school anatomy. Like it really, really opens your mind. It's super fun. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point. You know, the anatomy aspect of it, you know, and again, you know, teaching our kids that when we shoot an animal, it's like a biology lesson, and they're asking and pointing, what about this and what about that? And yeah, it's a great way to teach as well. And I'll admit, Andrea, we've eaten a few coon over the years too, so you're not alone. Martine, anything you wanna add to that food aspect of hunting?
Yeah, I mean, calories are a great motivator to get out there, right? And those meals are really special. What we found is that, I mean, there's nothing quite like the game you harvest. Sometimes you harvest an animal, and it's so novel, you know, like you were describing raccoons sort of tasting like pork. You know, sometimes you have waterfowl and you don't know what it tastes like. You know, you got a certain bird that's eating something and you're like, whoa, what is this? And sometimes it's, you know, filet mignon wrapped in bacon, you know, so it's, and sometimes out of the same flock, right? And so that variability for me was really interesting in the kitchen. And, you know, just the challenge of trying to use as many parts of the animal as possible too, right? So like using the gizzards out of the turkey or out of the geese or waterfowl that I'm harvesting, that kind of stuff. You know, a lot of folks have trouble cooking the legs, turkey legs, that kind of stuff. But my wife and I just make tamales each time we get a turkey. We'll just pressure cook the drums and the thighs, and we make delicious tamales. And that, you know, that happens after each harvest. So that ceremony in the kitchen is really, you know, a fun aspect of hunting as well. In addition to just having great meals. It's also a way of, I feel like, taking responsibility for the meat that you're eating, right? Like meat has a huge environmental cost and a huge, so ecological, but also societal cost as well, right? And so taking responsibility for that, and I don't know, that's pretty powerful for me. It was a major motivator for me to be able to, you know, eat primarily stuff that I've hunted. And so actually, deer hunting was the most productive for that. You get 1 or 2 deer and you're good for the whole year, and you're not hurting for meat, that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of different cuts, and so there's all these different types of meals you can cook too with that. So yeah, that was important to me.
Yeah, well, you know, and this goes back to the beginning of time with hunters, you know, in providing for the community and providing for others, and that's a really important part of hunting. And again, part of those feelings, fighting for others. And you know, Jamie and I started processing our own venison and making summer sausage and snack sticks and stuff like that. And there's a lot of pride in sharing that with, and we don't share it with everyone because there isn't as much to go around. But you know, it's like maple syrup, right? If you make your own maple syrup, there's a lot of pride with sharing that with other people. And so, yeah, I mean, that's, and we just started doing that the last 2 years, I'd say. So, you know, I've been hunting since I was 12. So, yeah, you can get into things later in life. And again, as a hunter, that kind of reactivates you, rejuvenates you, motivates you to get out there. And we'll start kind of wrapping up here. We wanted to try to keep our conversation to an hour, and then we'll go to Katie to see if there's any questions. And I think maybe the last question here that we'll close with, that we really hadn't talked about, that would be a nice one, is any surprises. So you had this preconceived notions, or thought you knew what you were getting into, and then you've done it. Anything surprising to you that you just really didn't anticipate when you started on that journey into hunting? And Andrea, I don't know if you have anything to share.
Oh yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm constantly surprised. Like my whole journey has been a surprise. Like I never even, I was surprised by having any success, and by all the friends I've made, like I'm come from the suburbs, I lived in Milwaukee, like very sort of like, but I've met so many different types of people who I would have never met unless I got into this. And like so many people have opened their arms to me. Like my neighbor lets me hunt his land. Like I've met mentors who have reached out to me and like just taken time out of their day, taking me along on their trap line, taking me hunting, taking me to their property. Like if you just show up places and you're excited and you talk to people, like the journey unfolds itself. Like it blew my mind, like I spent a lot of time worrying, like, how am I going to do this? Where am I going to go? Like thinking way too far ahead in the future, but like just showing up places, like things just sort of fell into place and it just blew me away. And it still does all the time. Like I don't know, every day you leave the house and like participate in something, like it's going to be wild. So yeah, I'm surprised every day. Like I love the journey I've been taken on. If you asked me 6 years ago if this is where I would be, I would have just laughed. So yeah.
Well, that's great, Andrea. And I really appreciate you sharing that, because you're a great example of someone that, urban, grew up in an urban area with not in a hunting family, and you got into it. And that's true. I think one of you said it before, that hunting's not for everyone, for sure. But there for some people there is a hidden passion there that needs to be ignited, and oftentimes it happens maybe when you're a young adult on your own, and maybe you have some extra cash and exploring hobbies and things like that. That I know a lot of people that and maybe it was through a boyfriend or a girlfriend, that they got introduced to it, and it just lit a fire, and they're just crazy hunters doing all kinds of stuff. And I also know on the other end, very active hunters that have kids that would have every opportunity to go hunting and have a great experience, and it's just not in them. And they tried it once or twice, and yeah, that's good. So it really isn't for everyone, for sure. But boy, if you're at all interested, there's a lot of opportunity to fuel that fire. So Martine, any surprises for you that you'd want to share?
Yeah, I think, Andrea touched on this too, sort of the network you build and all the folks you meet. A lot of my, I would say, sort of my lifelong friends are going to be hunters. These folks that I learned to hunt with in the DNR classes in Wisconsin, they've sort of moved and spread out, but, I still stay in contact with them. I'll send them a photo of a bird that I've harvested or something like that. And we just stay in touch that way. So that's been sort of a surprise at how strong a connection you can build when you're out in the field and you're talking about this thing that, you're very passionate about. That's been sort of a surprise for me. I think one other sort of element that's been really surprising to me is how much of a motivator it is to explore, your surroundings. So when I was in Wisconsin, I feel like I knew every public piece of land for like 150 miles from Madison. Like I went everywhere. And I was telling the lifelong Wisconsinites, like, hey, I went and I hunted turkeys here and I saw some blah, blah, blah. But, you as a hiker, you got to check this spot out. This is really cool. It's really different, You feel like you're in New Mexico when you're in this spot or something like that. You're out and it's just so different. And so that's been a lot of fun. And that's held true here, even in California. Once we moved, you're exploring all these little nooks and crannies of the state. that most folks don't have a reason to go to unless they're looking for calories, either mushrooms or turkeys or deer or whatever
Yeah.
the case is. And so it just gets you into all these really cool places.
Yeah, that's a really great point, Martine. Kind of that sense of adventure, and we hunt we hunt a lot of things with dogs and without dogs, but I always like the upland bird hunting, the coon hunting, because you're moving, you're walking, what's around the bend, and you're following your dog, and they'll take you to places that you wouldn't just. I just wouldn't just walk there, to hike, but and some amazing things. Listening to you reminded me, it was last fall, I was helping using one of our dogs to help blood track a deer for someone, and they were on the Goose Lake Wildlife Area, right? I think it's in Dane County or Jefferson County, right on the border there. And we were walking right along Highway 94 and like cars and, of course, safely. And we made a couple turns, and I had never been there. And we were into this area that the noise of the highway was gone, and it was just amazing. And I was just thinking, well, we're probably a half mile from a major interstate in the most populated part of our state, and this place looks like a totally different environment. So anyway, that's a great example of exploring and adventure. So, well, that's great. Go ahead.
I was going to say, we have some questions, so I want to
Okay.
make sure we have those, but I'm going to bring up here, just for anyone who's just joining us or wasn't able to grab it before, here's our contact information. If you have questions we're not able to get to tonight, go ahead, email them. We have Bob Knack, our DNR recruitment, retention, and reactivation team supervisor. You can feel free to reach out to him. Or Emily Eel, our DNR hunting and shooting sports program specialist. If you do have questions, feel free to email them there, and they will be able to help get you answers. So let's start off. Martine, you had mentioned that one of those things that was really difficult for you when you got started was just figuring out the regulations and what does it all mean. And I guess for Martine, Andrea, Bob, any of you, what tips or resources are there out there for people to get help understanding those regulations and figure out what it all means?
It's a good one. I don't know if you have to read the regs, right? You start there. I guess for me, I felt like I had trouble finding places to hunt, and you just have to know, like some sort of general rules of thumb, like, Forest Service land, generally you can hunt. National parks, you can't. State parks, it's a mix. Wildlife areas, you can mostly hunt. And so that was sort of a learning curve for me. That was an important one for me to get over, understanding sort of qualitatively if I think I can hunt there or not, and where to look for public land. That was always sort of a bottleneck for me. I would say that was sort of key for me, understanding that part. But sometimes that's in the regs too. It'll tell you like, you can only hunt here during certain times. I can hunt there. Cool. I'll put that on my list of places to check out and visit.
I would say the best thing for me is like find your local warden and find their email address or phone number and just call them or email them, because like I love to read the regulations, but they get confusing sometimes. And if you go on, if you ask on Facebook, you're going to get the wrong answer. So just go straight answer a lot of questions really quickly, just going to the authority themselves, right? That's kind of their job to help you. So like, if you're ever confused, like you don't need to risk it. You can just ask the person,
Yeah.
And on that,
nice.
I'll give a real quick plug also. You had mentioned Facebook, our DNR Facebook page. We are very engaged there. So also always feel free to reach out to us on Wisconsin DNR's Facebook. We're always happy to help answer those questions there as well.
Yeah. And I'm glad Andrea brought that up too, because Katie's right. DNR Facebook, in a response from the DNR, you're golden. Some of those other chats that are out there, groups that are out there, and I'm a member of them, and I read the responses, and that is not the right place to get legal interpretation of a rule. So yeah, DNR, trusted source there. The call center, we have a call center, a help desk that you could call as well. So.
Great. All right, next one. If I don't have any friends or family who hunt, how do I go about trying to find a mentor?
Well, I mean, I can talk about how I've found mentors. Like, go and sign up for Learn to Hunt programs and talk to people. And like, Learn to Hunt is really like a springboard into hunting. You know, like, you're not going to leave your Learn to Hunt 2-day program like ready to go. Like, you're still going to have a million questions. So those people who volunteer to do those programs, they like people and they like helping. So those are the perfect people to say, hey, can I have your phone number? Like, can I text you? Can I call you? Whatever, ask you questions. And like, maybe you guys live close enough, you can go together. Like, I've met a bunch of friends and mentors doing just that. And like, you know, just show up to events and talk to people, and people might just invite you. You could say like, hey, I'm really, really interested in this. Like, there are people out there like who are looking to mentor people. Like, a lot of my mentors are like, you know, older, maybe their kids aren't super into hunting. And so like, they're looking for someone to pass down information to. So go online, find events and show up and insert yourself into the conversation. That's what I did. You know, they're not going to knock on your door, as nice as that would be.
Yeah, I would just echo that. The hunting classes are key. I mean, if you didn't have the hunting classes, it would be pretty tough to find a mentor or someone. I mean, I don't know, you could try and, hey, mister at a Bass Pro Shops or something, but just go through the class route and get some phone numbers from folks. You know, that's sort of the easy, no-brainer way of doing it. And not every state has that resource. So if we've got folks from other places, it's going to be tough. But in Wisconsin, tons and tons of classes. You know, you can learn. If you don't want to start hunting, you can start ice fishing. If you don't want to shoot a deer, you can start with squirrels, that kind of stuff. So tons and tons of opportunities to meet folks and find a mentor. And, you know, my wife did a turkey class and she didn't get one during the class, but she spent a year chasing turkeys with her mentor from that class. And she learned a ton. And she, you know, and she harvested a big bird. So, you know, the mentor is willing to put in the work, you know, if the mentee is willing to show up. So just sign up for a class and start passing out your phone number and just put on a big smile, be friendly with folks.
Yeah, you know, and the last one that I'd add to both of those is, and I don't think we're going to be overwhelmed with contacts or phone calls, but reach out to Emily and I. You know, I'm looking for somebody to help me learn how to hunt in Sheboygan County, and odds are we know somebody through our contacts as you know, DNR employees, through the various programs that we're involved with, through the Conservation Congress, the hunter ed instructors, the organizations. I mean, the list goes on, and we could probably help you find somebody in your area as well.
Great. All right, next one. Where do I find and sign up for those Learn to Hunt classes?
Yeah, I can maybe answer that. And I mentioned it during the presentation, but if you go to the DNR web page and just in the keyword search type Learn to Hunt, it'll take you to a page with information about that, and there'll be a link on there that lists our calendar of events that you can look at, and then within that calendar we'll have instructions on how to sign up. I think there'll be a contact information for somebody as well. So that's probably the best the best way. Although I will say that, as I mentioned before, there's lots of groups and organizations and clubs that are putting on Learn to Hunts that in their community, you know, they if they're taking 15 people, they got 15 people. And so of course we're not going to necessarily put it on a web page if the program is full. And so check the DNR web page, but also, you know, try to work within your community with, you know, local groups and organizations that might be offering something as well.
It seems like conservation groups have been doing Learn to Hunt too. Like, there's a really cool Learn to Bow Hunt through Backcountry Hunters and Anglers right now in Wisconsin. And I know that the National Wild Turkey Foundation has learned to hunt programs in Wisconsin. So like a good thing that I like to do is just like find these conservation organizations and just like them on Facebook, Wisconsin Trappers Association. And then like they'll post information and then you'll be the first to see it. Like just join stuff, like join Wisconsin Whitetail Hunt. There's all sorts of crazy Facebook pages, and you don't have to take everything they say as gospel, but like it's a great way to just like stay in the loop. What's going on? Where can I show up? So I like to do that.
We do also have an email list for some of those upcoming classes. So if you're interested as well, go ahead and email Bob and Emily, and we'll be able to get you added to that email list for future notification. So that's another good option as well. Next question. Again, if you have other questions, feel free to throw them here in the chat. We'll keep them going for a little bit longer here. This is kind of a fun one for Martine and Andrea, each of you. What's your favorite wild game meal to cook at home?
I can start. I mean, the tamales are pretty top notch, honestly, but I think, with the, I don't know, I guess I don't like the choice cuts, because I'll cook the deer shanks as ossobuco. I'll make ossobuco with that. And basically you're taking that low little spindly part of a deer's leg, and you can cut that up and make a fancy meal with that. So that's one that I like to do in addition to the tamales. But nothing wrong with just a backstrap cooked like a steak, and rare, medium rare.
Yeah, backstrap, right? Very special night of backstrap. But my favorite, I guess the most exciting thing is I love to cook the heart of the deer. And it's like, I know it sounds weird to some people, and some people leave it in the field. Don't leave it in the field. It is the most tender, delicious. I love to eat the heart. It is so special. And there's just one per deer. It's like very special meal. And I also love to come home from catfishing late at night, midnight, and like deep fry some catfish and have a couple beers. That's like very fun, special meal too. So yeah.
That's
All
great.
right.
I mean, so many good meals. Yeah, squirrel pot pie. I mean, there's a billion ways to have fun with your game once you're back in the kitchen. So
yeah, there's the Meat Eater cookbooks are super good, and then there's a guy called Hank Shaw, SHAW, I think, and he has awesome cookbooks. So those are my two like favorite resources.
All right. Where can people find more information about public land hunting in Wisconsin and actually find those various public land hunting opportunities?
there's an app, right?
OnX, gotta have it.
There's OnX, but wasn't there a free DNR app too? I was using that for a while.
Yep, there is. Yep. Wild was, look, Wild, I haven't looked at it since it's not hunting season, but Wild Wisconsin, I believe it's called. Yeah, where it's got public lands on the app right there. OnX, Andrea mentioned. There's again, if you're searching on the DNR web pages, there's information on public lands to hunt there as well, and public land atlas. So anyway, those are a few things that come to mind for me, but I didn't want to, sorry if I interrupted you, Martine.
No, that's a good plug. I think there's also, like, I'm trying to remember the resources that I used in Wisconsin. I mean, for fishing spots, I was always looking. There is sort of an atlas, right? That's county by county. So I use that to find fishing and hunting spots, primarily out in the driftless area. Just Google around for like some kind of public land database if you're not, in Wisconsin. These are sort of Wisconsin specific things, but like, I don't know, I'm in California. I got to find different things out here. So any sort of public land resource, and then you just have to go through the list of, find on the website or the page that you can actually hunt there, because not every property that's public you can hunt, right? So, but finding public land.
And just to clarify, the app is called Hunt Wild, and just one little piece of be careful. OnX is great, but it doesn't connect to our public land databases. So it's not necessarily going to always be the most accurate when it comes to those Wisconsin DNR lands. So we as the DNR cannot guarantee that what you're finding there is going to be accurate. So just one piece to be aware of there. We have time for just a couple more. I'd love to hear from each of you. What do you love the most about hunting?
I guess for me, that's a tough question. I guess just like tackling a goal, it can be really hard and really punishing, and working towards a goal that you very well might not achieve is really rewarding. Like, it's addicting. Like, when people talk about like being crazy about hunting, can't stop, like, you want it so bad, and it's such a good feeling when you achieve it. So I guess just reaching a goal, that's great, and having something to show for it, that's my favorite part.
Yeah, I think my favorite part is sort of there's this concept of a seasonal round where it's like, oh, it's the fall, I'm gonna do this, or it's springtime, it's time to plant whatever, and so hunting for me is just part of my seasonal round. There's sort of like a prime fishing time and a prime hunting time for different species, and then there's time to garden and blah blah blah. And so I just like that, sort of paying attention to the seasonal rhythms and paying attention to the weather and that kind of stuff. It just makes me it's sort of a different naturalist element in my life where I'm paying attention to different things. And I always did bird, and I fished and that kind of stuff. And so hunting is just like a new way to pay attention to what's going on. It's always something to look forward to too. So that anticipation is pretty great for me.
Yeah, and I just a couple notes that I wrote down, and I mentioned this earlier, taking a break from the day-to-day, stress relief, mental health, is always the topic of discussion. So I like it for that reason. I like the adventure, as I mentioned before, especially hunting with dogs, I think is great. And then lastly, sharing that time with my wife and my kids and my dad and, family and friends is really important.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I mean, one of my favorite things to hunt is turkey, and it's because I can spend, I get to spend 5 days chasing turkeys with my wife. That's a ton of fun. I love that.
Yeah, and it's often been said, and I have teenage girls now. We're very busy, and dad's not as cool to hang around with anymore. And so, spending time with them in a deer blind or a duck blind or whatever we're doing, turkey hunting, it's one-on-one time where they're not off with their friends or doing another activity. And so even the truck ride to and from, that's just really special to be able to talk with them.
All right, we have time for one last question here. I'd love to hear if you guys could each give a new hunter one piece of advice. What would that be?
One piece of advice. I mean, the thing that kickstarts it all off is a class and finding a mentor. And so that really is maybe your first step to actually getting into the sport. It's pretty generic, but sign up for a class.
Yeah, dude, that's the beginning. I would say, like, don't be afraid to try something that might not be in what you thought you were going to do. Like, some of my favorite things to do, hunting with hounds. I have a coon dog, I run raccoon, and I run a trap line. Like, I took a but I'm going to learn about it. And the same thing with hunting with dogs. I was like, this is crazy. I can't even believe I signed up for this. And they both ended up being so fun. And now I do both. And I never saw that coming. So you don't know what's inside of you. You don't know what you're going to love. Like, if it sparks your interest, even if it makes you nervous and that's why you're interested in it, like, just sign up. I always tell myself, like, I'm going to sign up. I'm going to go. And if it's horrible, I can always just go home. You know what I mean? Like, try it and it might, totally change everything. So don't just think deer hunting, think like all hunting. What could it be? And being in sort of small, more niche level hunting leads to more opportunity and more space. Like, if there's less people doing it, there's more room for you. So it's something to think about.
Yeah, and I'll just echo what Andrea and Martine said, is put yourself out there, go outside your comfort zone a little bit and get to know people. And, oftentimes with TV shows or YouTube shows or whatever, you watch and they're hunting shows, and that's really neat. And I think what some of those shows are missing at the end is, you can do this, right? You just watch me do it. You can do it. And so you just need to take those first steps. And I hope the webinar tonight is going to help people do that.
All right. And with that concludes tonight's webinar. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for considering going hunting in Wisconsin. We'd like to thank our guests, Andrea and Martine, as well as our host, Bob Mack. And again, should you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to our team here at the Wisconsin DNR, whether that's Bob Mack with our recruitment, retention, and reactivation team, or Emily Eel, who is our hunting and shooting sports program specialist. Again, thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful evening.